Good afternoon to those of you who are joining us live, and hello to you if you are listening or watching back. You are joining Fire 5 at Phoenix. I'm Zoe from Phoenix Life and Wellbeing Coaching, and I'm joined today by Danny Lloyd. Now, Danny's going to introduce himself in just a moment, but just so that you know what you're tuning into, what you're going to be listening to over the next 45 minutes or so, give or take, depends how the conversation goes. No pressure, Danny. We're going to be talking about the topic of mindset today. Now, the way Fire 5 at Phoenix works is that Danny has brought with him 5 questions on the topic of mindset. I haven't seen those questions, so I have no idea what's coming. I trust Danny. I do trust him. But I have no idea what questions are coming, and I have no idea what conversation is going to take place. Danny has an amazing story, and mindset definitely is a key part in Danny's journey. So let me not create any spoilers. Danny, do you want to introduce yourself? But firstly, thank you and welcome.
No, thanks for asking me on. I've watched a few. It was quite exciting, actually.
Good.
I'm obviously Danny. I had a stroke at the age of 22. As a result of an autoimmune disorder. I didn't know that's what had happened until a couple of months after, bizarrely, when my GP brought it up in a conversation. I think one of the key things for me was 6 months before I had a stroke or had this illness, this bizarre illness, they didn't know what was going on. I actually competed in a bodybuilding competition. So as far as I knew, I was, at the peak of my health, fitness, well-being, and then 6 months later it came sort of crashing down, really. I sort of had this diagnosis, and then it was sort of fairly well managed. It's not curable, but it's sort of very manageable, and I was like that for about 17 years, I think. What I thought was fairly well managed, unbeknown to me, it had gone a bit awry. And then on early hours of New Year's Day 2013, you tried going to use the bathroom of all places, classy. I collapsed in the bathroom at home, and I'd had a second stroke. This one was a hemorrhage stroke, and it basically triggered off like a catastrophic variant of the autoimmune disorder I had, and as a result, a claim to fame, if you like. I was in hospital from New Year's Day 2013, and I didn't come out until the end of June 2013, so 6 months.
Wow.
I was an inpatient, very unwell for 3 months, and then I was lucky enough to go to a brain injury rehab unit for 3 months. One thing that's slightly strange, I suppose, but now it's paying me back. I didn't really lose any cognitive function or ability through all of it, which at the time was bad because I was very aware of what was going on and what I couldn't do, which, because I was very frightened, it made a lot of things worse.
Yeah.
And yet, now it's brilliant because of the experiences I gained, and the things I learned sort of as a result of, going through that, I guess. Because most of the stuff I have is physical. My balance is sort of quite badly affected. I have some coordination problems, not too many, and fatigue kicks in sort of quite easily if I don't manage it quite well. But yeah, I suppose that's a fairly quick overview of who I am and why I'm here, I suppose.
I know it's such an incredible story, but I think from my point of view, asking you to come on as a guest, in particular covering this topic as well, because the mindset has been such a key part of your recovery, but also day to day in how you approach things. And I know you've got your Instagram account is very much around positive mindset and with humor as well. It's a great account to follow, and we'll tag Danny's details in so that you can find them. But I think
thank you.
From my point of view, your mindset is as inspiring in terms of how you see things and how you approach things. So I'm really glad to have you on as a guest today. So thank you.
That's quite a compliment from yourself. Thanks.
I think it's really difficult, isn't it? I mean, everybody's got their own journeys and everybody's got their own way of seeing things. But I think sometimes, we meet people and, we can just, it's just inspirational to me. So I'm really glad to have you on. I'm saying that I still have to hear your 5 questions. So I might feel differently about you in by the time we get to the end of this, but I trust you. And I'm just really looking forward to the questions that you've got and the conversation that happens today. So I'm ready when you are, if you want to go ahead with the first question.
All right. So shall I do it one at a time and just see how we go? Or
let's go with your first question and then we'll see how it goes.
Right. Yeah, well, the first one's quite straightforward, really. So I'm reading it off a piece of paper, that's why I'm looking.
Right. No worries.
I just was quite simply, how would you define a healthy mindset?
Ooh. It's a very simple question, but possibly with quite a deep answer, isn't it? I mean, what is a healthy mindset? The thing that comes to mind for me is being able to look at the big picture and being able to find the positives in a situation. And I think if I'm being really honest, I think there have been times in my life where I've almost taken that too far and not necessarily been realistic about what is going on. It's a great coping mechanism, isn't it? A positive mindset, but I think it does need to be in balance, and you do need to sit with the uncomfortable side of things as well. And I think sometimes it can be almost easier to try and rush through and find the positive and be all bright and breezy and move on, but that's not always helpful. So I think it's in balance. I mean, everything that in life is all about balance, isn't it? And it's a balance that I think works for you, but I think it is about being able to take a step back sometimes and look at the big picture and find the positives within the situation that you're in. I think also I would say it's forward focused, solution focused, looking forward, looking at what you can do, what is in your control, what you can do about what's happening, but looking forward rather than looking back. I think we can really get caught up in looking back sometimes, and then it impacts our present, which then impacts potentially the future. So those are the things that spring to my mind straight away. What would your answer be? What would you say that I haven't mentioned?
I think you covered most of the things I would say, and I noticed how you picked up on the point of where sometimes it's not necessarily a negative thing, but it can get you into trouble, I suppose, because I think in the past I was sort of guilty of always wanting to seem like I was okay. So when everyone says, "Are you all right?" Yes, I would always just say, "Yeah, I'm fine." And one of my friends actually, a few years ago said to me, for years, no one really knew much about you. And I thought, what do you mean? And he said, because people say, "You're all right," and you say, "Yeah, I'm fine, thanks." And that was it. And yet I had all sorts going on. And I never would sort of say anything about it, I suppose, until, like most people, it came crashing down at one point or another.
Yeah.
Like,
it's difficult, isn't it? I mean, there's that whole, it's okay to not be okay. And I think for me, the sentiment that I take from that is that it's okay to say that you're not okay. I don't actually think it's okay to not be okay, but I think it's okay to say that you're not okay. But I also understand, and I think I'm a little bit like you in that sense, in that sometimes it's not always helpful to talk about your problems. And there's a time and a place to talk about it and work it through. And you don't want it to dominate every single conversation that you have. And it does shape subsequent conversations that go on from that as well. So I think there is a time and a place to be open with the right people in the right environment where you do have that space to be able to open up and talk things through. And I think there are times where perhaps it's not appropriate, but I also, for me, I think the balance for me is if I'm working through something, I wouldn't want it to dominate every conversation. So I think you choose who and when and where and how you open up, But I think that's the balance, isn't it? And that balance is different for different people. There'll be some people who are much more comfortable with opening up and being very, they'll describe it as being very authentic, that this is how I feel, it's not a great day. And others, their line in the sand of where they feel comfortable doing that might be slightly different. So again, it's the balance is very individual, and I certainly wouldn't say it's a one size fits all. It's just what's comfortable for you, but also what works for you as well.
Yeah, I think as well, from my point of view, before I was ill in 2013, more I would say, when things were very serious, I used to keep so much to myself, and yet this side of it, if you want to put it like that, I'm find it a lot more easier to speak about myself, and what's going on and those sort of things. Probably too much sometimes, if I'm honest.
I think that's the balance, though, isn't it? And I had this conversation with somebody yesterday, and I was saying, and we both were talking about how we both go quite inward when we're working things through, because we like that time and space to be able to work it through before we talk it through with somebody else. And I think other people work it through by talking it through with somebody else. It is very much a balance of what works for you, but I think it's taking that time out to think, actually, is it working, or do I want to do something differently?
I said to someone this morning, funny enough, I met someone briefly this morning, and was saying how we were both quite chatty people, and I joked to her and said, when I was, I actually lost my voice. I lost the ability to speak, not from a cognitive point of view, but because it is coordination. I literally couldn't form the words to speak properly, because my speech and language therapy and things like that. And then when it came back, I probably haven't shut up since, I said. So I was making up for lost time.
I don't know that I ever shut up full stop. I don't think it's a bad thing. I think, certainly having heard you speak and heard you tell your story and heard you engage with other people who are not necessarily the same challenges, but who can learn from your experiences, I think it is good to share it, and good to be able to talk it through.
Yeah, it's I just think sometimes when we start, if someone gets something from it that helps them, then you can't really ask for any more than that, I don't think.
Yeah, I think the way that I describe it is with purpose. Certainly if I'm talking or sharing, I try to be quite conscious over what the purpose is of going into my past and sharing things from my past. It's if there's a purpose, if I feel it would be helpful, or if somebody's asked, it's purposeful, I guess. Intentional, purposeful, probably be the words I would pick.
Yeah, that makes sense. Shall I go to the next question?
Yeah.
It sort of all overlaps, I guess, really. This one is, what do you think cultivates or leads to a healthy mindset?
So I think some of us are very fortunate to learn it from the beginning. We are surrounded by adults who have that healthy mindset, so we learn that from them. But not everybody has those early experiences. I think as we grow, as we meet new people and we kind of work the world out for ourselves, I think that also helps shape it. And I think in reality, it's not something that just happens. I think it's something that you have to learn to work with. You have to find what works for you. You have to find that balance that works for you. But I think it doesn't just happen. You don't just decide, one day that you want to have a more positive mindset, and so tomorrow when you wake up, that's what happens. It takes work, it takes effort, and it takes energy to think differently and to really challenge the way that you think and the way that you process things that happen to you. So I think it does take a lot of work. And I think whilst some of us are very fortunate to have learned those tools in our early life, not everybody has that opportunity. And I think sometimes we have experiences that kind of disrupt that, and we have to go back to working out what works for us and being able to do it. I think I know I've talked on these podcasts before about, different tools that kind of help people to practice being a more positive mindset, cleaning your teeth and having two spaces in your day where it's a positive thinking space only, when you clean your teeth in the morning, when you clean your teeth at night, looking for things that you're grateful for in the morning, but at the same time or later on in the day, thinking about the things that have gone well during the day. They're things that you have to practice that you have to give time and energy to it and show up and practice those things. But also when you notice that you're not doing it, you have to challenge yourself to think about things differently.
It's
I think it definitely takes work.
It's sort of when those like patterns and habits, I suppose, when they start slipping, is the sooner you can catch yourself and recognize they're slipping. That's like quite a skill in itself, I guess.
Yeah, and I think
with me, I was always, I suppose, fairly quiet, fairly shy, and then I started to change through sport and stuff, joining different gyms and the people I met. I think I learned to push myself physically to start with, and yet how I looked didn't have any bearing on how I was. It was almost like a mismatch, like a suit of armor, I suppose. And then some of the friends I've still got now, I met through the gym and things like that. One in particular, I think of him every time. From day one, he was always one of those people who was so comfy in his own skin, and he would literally say it as it is, and which didn't always go well because some people don't like that. But I quite admired it, and I always sort of, I guess, wanted to be more like him. Not exactly like him, because you're never going to be. You don't really want to be someone else, but have some of those traits he had. And I think I learned a lot from him, and trying to be a bit more like that. And I think definitely to start with, it is like a fake it till you make it type of situation. And then I started to put myself in positions where I didn't really have a choice. A long time back, I took a job working on like door staff security, which was because of how I looked, I guess, but it was nothing like how I was. And it was really, really hard, just to sort of almost play a character, I suppose. I didn't like confrontation. I don't particularly like it now. Who does, I suppose. But that was quite a learning curve. And then you sort of, I suppose I learned when to address something and when to let things sort of slide without being over the top both ways. Because at the same time, I worked with people who, were full on, would argue with anyone about anything. I thought that ain't right to me either, that sort of thing.
We had a conversation in the community group last week talking about what acting as if, which anybody who's ever had CBT has probably heard it, but it is that fake it till you make it in a certain sense, but really thinking about, okay, how do I want to be? And what does that look like? What does that feel like? How would I behave differently? How would I think differently? How would I feel differently? And then acting as if, so almost bringing that future sense of self into your present. And, that works with confidence and it works with mindset. And what would a positive person, what would somebody with a positive mindset think in this situation? How would they respond to it? How would they feel about it? How would they talk about it? And start to bring that into your present. It's a really powerful tool, and it's used similar in NLP, so and CBT, lots of different sort of therapeutic tools that are really helpful to be able to do that. So I think, but it takes effort. It doesn't just happen. People aren't, people learn to think in a positive way. It's a learned behavior. So certainly anybody who is struggling with that right now, that hopefully there's some reassurance there that it is a learned behavior and it's something that with practice and with effort and energy, it's absolutely something that you can have.
I agree completely. My third question, so I'm still looking at the paper again. This one's more, I suppose, not personal in that sense, but more specific, I guess. Do you have one specific time where you called on or discovered that you had a strong and healthy mindset, but you didn't perhaps realize it till after when you look back on it?
Oh, that's a really good question. So when I didn't realize it, but I can look back on it now. The thing that, as with any of these things, it's what pops first into your mind sometimes, isn't it? But I think you mentioned sport and confidence and things that you learn in sport, but I think the thing that really picks up for me is, I was 18 when I first started working for the police, so sort of fresh out of A levels, some kind of life skills, but certainly not as much as I thought I did. But I think that first sort of certainly 6 months in that job really pushed me out of my comfort zone, to the point I don't know that my comfort zone was even in sight anymore. It was such a steep learning curve. And I think some of the things that I dealt with and how I approached it and how I tackled it, interesting. I don't think I've ever really thought about this. So this question's really helping me to see it differently. I think I was tapping into that positive mindset probably more than I've ever really given it credit for. It's not something I've really thought about. There's really obvious ones that I knew, if I go back over my timeline, there's very obvious situations that I've been in where I've really had to kind of press the button and activate it. But I think actually that my 18-year-old self starting that job in the police probably was using that unconsciously and definitely not aware of that's what I was learning and that's what I was doing. But a great question. I've never really thought about it like that before.
No, I think I guess I came up with the question because, well, when I was ill, I sort of, you're just trying to get through rehab initially. And for me, trying to get back to as normal a life, as you can get. And I think because of the sport sort of thing, I hadn't realized how I was so used to pushing myself. So in rehab, there's like a little gym there, and most people didn't like going, and yet I loved going every morning. I was like the keen bean who was there ready to go, and it was like they couldn't do things quick enough for me. I was trying to run before I literally could walk.
Yeah, but you're every physio's dream.
But it was really hard. I've got friends now who I do various things with, and they both remind me of you have to rein yourself in quite a lot, because I can push too hard, sometimes to my own detriment. And I wasn't aware of that, and now I am.
It's really interesting, isn't it? And I think certainly we can push ourselves physically. Do we challenge ourselves to push ourselves mentally in the same way? And I think for me, similar experience in that I found that pushing myself in the gym and challenging myself in the gym and pushing myself through that period of being uncomfortable and kind of pushing past what I thought I could do really gave me the confidence outside of the gym to put myself in situations that were uncomfortable and push myself past the point where I thought my limit was. So for me, the physical came before the kind of mental development as well. So
similar to me, I think. Similar thing. I heard a guy, he's still alive, but he doesn't do what he used to do anymore. And he was really, really high up in like self-protection and self-defense stuff in the UK. And I heard him talk once at a book signing, and he summed it up really well for me. He said like a key for him was getting used to leaning into sharp edges. And I thought, that's brilliant. That's like such an easy way to think of it. Or get comfortable with leaning into sharp edges, I think was what he said.
I really like
that's
that.
Really good. Yeah.
And I think one of my favorite expressions is get comfortable with being uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And I think whether
same type of thing.
Yeah, I think it probably is that similar sort of sentiment, isn't it? But I think certainly conversations that I have with people, being uncomfortable is not always a negative. And I think we make that automatic assumption that if we feel discomfort, then it's a negative. But if we really think about it, if we take that step back, look at that bigger picture, so many things that have brought us success, that have brought us that growth and development and taken us to where we want to be, have been uncomfortable. And that's a positive. So I think it's that natural, it feels uncomfortable. So I want to step back from that. I want to withdraw from it. So that getting used to leaning into that feeling and saying, okay, this is not comfortable for me right now, but it means that I'm taking that step forward and I'm going to get closer to where it is that I want to be, whatever that looks like, whether it's physical or mental. But I've not heard that expression before. I like that.
I suppose it's it gets said a lot, doesn't it, that there's very little growth in your comfort zone. But I suppose at the same time, like we were saying before, if you jump miles outside of it, you get overwhelmed by it like too quickly. Whereas if you're just literally just take a step over it, that's where you can start to develop and grow a bit then, I think. But finding that balance is really tricky.
You tell me about it. And I think this is where, like, when we first met and when we've had conversations before, something that we've had in common, isn't it, that element of, okay, how far is too far? Because you get, I think that push and that sometimes that being uncomfortable and pushing past your limits, addictive wouldn't be the right word, I don't think.
I know what you mean.
It's a very what is the right word? It is a bit of addictive. You get that rush, you get those endorphins when you push past what you thought was possible. And I think we can do that in terms of recovery, whether it's recovery from something that we've experienced or that physical recovery, like in your journey. But I think also being able to proactively do that as well. So not just from a recovery, but also being able to do that in a proactive way that helps us to kind of continue pushing forward. So that's amazing.
I just thought there, to my own embarrassment really, how my mindset can get completely ahead of the game and not be realistic. When I first came out of rehab, I was so keen to do something again for like charity or something like that. I was looking online and trying to get friends signed up with me to go out to South America and walk miles and go up Machu Picchu, which and I was saying, if we do this, raise this, we can go, raise the funding. And one of my friends said, are you sure, you're all right to do that? And I was like, it'd be fine. Completely oblivious. I couldn't walk around the block at that point. And yet I was ready to go.
It's setting those big and exciting goals though, isn't it? It's having something to work towards. And I think that's part of the positive mindset, isn't it? Of having things that you put in front of you. And you might need to set smaller milestones that help you kind of chunk it down and take smaller steps. But I think a big part of positive mindset is having those things that push you way out of your comfort zone. It's just then finding a way that you can move towards that in a way that works for you, so that it's manageable, it's sustainable, you can be consistent with it, rather than taking too big a step and getting overwhelmed and retreating back to the comfort zone.
Oh, definitely. Right, question 4. Do you have a motto that you live by that illustrates your mindset?
I think it would be that, get comfortable with being uncomfortable. I think that, and the other thing that I say a lot is, it is what it is. I think get comfortable with being uncomfortable is almost the before, the kind of internal dialogue, and then the after something has happened, the shrug of it is what it is. It's either happened. If it's not in my control, if I can't influence it, just got to let things go and keep moving forward. So I think either of those two, one for before and one for after. I think if you were to push me for one, it would be getting comfortable with being uncomfortable, because I think that applies to everything. And for me, it's that recognizing when that feeling is uncomfortable because it's different, because it's unfamiliar, not necessarily because it's a negative. And is it fear or is it excitement? There might be a lot of things unknown, but what do you know? And just being able to rationalize that a little bit more, I think. So get comfortable with being uncomfortable. Like, okay, there's this feeling, here we go again. But what's on the other side of that I can get excited about? What's yours?
Good. I think for me, again, I got two, but I think if I was pushed to one, it'd probably be better today than yesterday, and keep doing it. And the other one, which I always put, having said that was the better one, the one I put all over the place usually on social media is control the controllables and let everything else take care of itself. I blagged that, I'll be honest, from Stoicism, the philosophy, the Stoics. There's a lot of very common sense, sort of almost obvious things that they sort of live to, and when you think that's over a couple of thousand years old and people still use that stuff. And I think I'm right in saying some of the basic principles of CBT can be traced back to Stoicism, I think, like some of the like very practical things.
Well, I mean, if you think of, I'm not in terms of CBT and NLP and all of the things that positive psychology, it all traces back to how we tick as humans, doesn't it? So it's and we as humans, the world has evolved massively, but in terms of our brain and how we function, not so much. Almost possibly quite deteriorated. I think it's that it all traces back to the science, doesn't it, of how we function as humans. So I think that it is what it is, and letting go of the things that we can't control, that we can't influence. It's one of my favorite coaching questions is what do you need to let go of that's going to help you to move forward? And it's so easy to just keep carrying around things that aren't helpful to us. And again, that's part of the mindset, isn't it? Because we're not physically carrying it, we're just carrying it in our headspace, and it's taking up space, and it's heavy for a lot of people. The things that they carry with them are heavy. So that question of what do you need to let go of that's going to help you to move forward is one of my favorite coaching questions.
I guess within that, the skill, if you like, that you need to learn is how to identify what things are in your control and what aren't. Because I think within the Stoicism stuff, they have a thing called like the dichotomy of control, and there's actually very little things that are fully in your control. It literally is your thoughts and your mindset, really, and not a lot else.
No, and we can influence. Absolutely.
Exactly right. What I was going to say that.
Very small.
Because even like things like your health, you think, well, you can influence it by eating well, exercising, but if you're going to get something come along, sometimes there's nothing you can do about that.
Absolutely.
Right, last question now.
Okay.
Is there something you tell yourself or remind yourself when things are tough?
I don't know that there's like a motto or anything like that. I think sometimes for me it's taking the step back and looking at the big picture. And I think the reminder is you've got through other stuff before and you'll get through this. Whatever this is, however tough this feels right now, you've been through situations that have felt like this and you've worked your way through them. And I think sometimes it's not always about like the tools to get through it or what is needed to get through it. Sometimes it's that tolerance or resilience that you can stick with it and come out of it the other side. So I think it's probably that. And I think sometimes you kind of have to look back, don't you, and think, okay, well, you've you've been through worse, or oh no, actually
Yeah.
this could be the worst thing that
Yeah.
you've been through so far. But that, you know, going back and sort of thinking, okay, well, what did you tap into when you got through this? What's the most similar thing to this, and how did you get through that? What can you tap into? And I think also, and something that I'm still working on, is recognizing when I need an extra pair of hands and asking for help. It's definitely a work in progress, because I do find it difficult to ask for help, but I think I am learning more to recognize, okay, this is what I can do, and actually if I can talk it through, or if somebody can offer me some support, then I can do this much, and recognizing that it's, you know, it's team. Sometimes you just need an extra pair of hands, and you need somebody else to give you that support. And it doesn't mean that you're not doing it. You know, it is that support rather than somebody taking it off you. But sometimes that can make all of the difference.
Yeah, I suppose like in like a work setting, you know, when someone is managing something or controlling something, it's very hard to delegate, because if your standards are very high, you like things done a particular way, and it's really hard to ask someone, oh, could you help with this? Because then you want to keep checking what they're doing to make sure it's to your own standards, and then you think, I might as well do it myself. It's difficult. It is difficult.
Yeah, that's the things that you learn to let go of, isn't it? Of it, you hold on to the outcome and how you want the outcome to be. You let go of the little bit in the middle. I think that a lot of people struggle with asking for help. I think it's quite a common thing, and I think letting go and or saying I can't do this on my own. I'm going to need some help with this. You know, it can feel like a weakness, but I think it's actually a big sign of strength.
Yeah, because you're sort of recognizing, you could do with a hand sort of thing. Do you think on that thing, do you think that's pride that comes into it when you think
pride and ego, I think, isn't it? To a point of we need to, we want to feel that we can do it by ourselves. We want ego, need to be right, need to know more, need to have all of the answers, need to be able, putting yourself in that position of being a little bit superior. Well, you might not have been able to do it, but I can manage all of this. I think it is ego and pride, but ultimately, if you want to come out of it the other side, sometimes, as with your recovery, it was a whole team of
definitely
people with different skill sets and specialisms that were able to get you back or get you forward into where you wanted to be, and I think sometimes we have to accept that we don't have all of the answers. And
that's right, because I remember when I first or just before I got accepted to go to the rehab unit, I had to meet the consultant who ran it, and I remember I was in such a mess that I'm physically a wreck, and I remember meeting him, and he was such a nice guy, and I think I actually cried and begged him to give me a place so that I could prove to him that I could better myself. And he gave me a place, and it went on from there. And then I had the strange coincidence, or whatever you want to call it, of going into a gym, and I was thinking, this guy's taking ages on this thing, and I was waiting, and I said, have you got many more? And it was him. It was such a weird, he was in the gym training where I went, and I don't know who was more shocked, me or him.
That's amazing.
It was brilliant. I didn't have to shake his hand and be all formal or give him a hug in the gym. And I think I told him at the time, I said, I didn't have to shake your hand or hug you. And he laughed, and I can't even remember what we did.
That's amazing, isn't it? I think that's the thing, is just, I think the thing that I remind myself of when I really kind of struggle with that, asking for help or trusting other people to step in and help, I try and remind myself of how I feel when I'm in a position to be able to help other people. Actually, people want to help because it feels good to them as much as it helps you. And I think that's what that's how I try and reconcile it. But
that makes sense, because that's sort of because I do a lot of volunteering and things now, for the Stroke Association, and I've spoke for the charity with the autoimmune condition I have. And like you say, it's so rewarding, doing things for other people. And I think, beforehand, I probably didn't volunteer or do anything like that. Why would I suppose is how I used to think. And then because it was something I could do, and realizing the value of it, I would say to anyone, if you're in particular, if you've got a low mood, or you could do with a lift, is help someone else. It's amazing what it does for you.
Yeah, I would completely agree with that. And it's a human psychological need of contribution and significance is it definitely taps into that. But we get those endorphins when we help other people. There's a very physical chemical response when we help people. It does physically feel good, it emotionally feels good, but it also physically feels good. I was writing a course last month and was looking into the random acts of kindness and being able to support other people, and was looking at some research where it was talking about the endorphins that we get when we help other people, and then the endorphins that the person who is being helped, what they feel, and that statistically that person is then more likely to go on and help somebody else. So they feel the need to pass it forward. So it does have that ripple effect, when it's not only does it help us, it helps the individual, but it also increases the chance of that individual going on and helping somebody else, and so on and so on and so on. So
because you see that like in even everyday mundane things, like in the car driving, and you let someone out, and then you notice they let someone out further down the road. It is amazing how it does work.
It's a good chain reaction.
And
so simple and easy to do as well, isn't it? That's the thing. If we just step outside of our own heads sometimes and increase that awareness of other people, it's really easy to do, because it's even just something as saying something nice. It doesn't need to be given up a day to volunteer. It might just be that you go and say something, give some kindness out. Very very easy to do with a big impact.
I think that's something I actually have been making like a concerted effort to do. If I see something nice, or what someone's done, I try my best to say something now, whereas in the past I would notice and keep quiet and sort of feel a bit silly saying that, whereas now I'm quite happy to look like an idiot saying whatever I need to say.
I'm exactly the same, and I forget when I'm with people that I perhaps don't know so well, and somebody will walk past, I'm like, oh my god, I love your trousers, as they're kind of strolling past you, and you can almost see that people say, sorry, what? And I'm like, love your trousers, have a great day. It's just it feels good. It's a nice way to show up in the world.
I know it's slightly off the subject, but my partner Emma, she had an appointment at Southmead Hospital a long time back, and she's got her own other massive story. But we were walking down through the long corridor there, and out of nowhere she shouted to a lady, excuse me, and I thought, oh my god, right, what's going on now? And the lady stopped dead and turned around, and as we caught her up, Emma said, you've got about 2 foot of toilet paper stuck to the bottom of your shoe. And the lady went, oh my god, thank you so much, and all that. And she went, I just noticed and thought you should know. But it was the fact she shouted about 20, 30 yards down the whole atrium to tell her. I think the woman thought she'd done something really bad.
Oh, that's great. That's good, because you would want to know, wouldn't you? I think it's something we all worry about. But I saw a really short video actually. I think it might have even come through TikTok, but it was saying that unless you can, in terms of calling things out like that, unless the individual can fix it in 5 seconds, you hold it to yourself. Because if they can't, I think it's that control influence, isn't it? So so with something like that, she can fix that quite quickly in 5 seconds. So you're helping that person. But if you're pointing something else out that can't be fixed, not so helpful. I think that's what people worry about, isn't it?
That's a handy way to remember it, actually.
I do think people worry how those kind of comments or things like that are received. So that for me was a really good way of thinking about it.
Yeah, because you see it a lot with people with tags sticking out of clothes, and things like that, really basic things, and you think they must want to know that that's sticking out.
Yeah, that sounds like something I would do.
Yeah, things like that. Yeah.
Brilliant. Was that your 5 questions?
That was 5 questions. Yeah.
They were great questions too, and you definitely got me thinking too. Definitely got me thinking. And I think, knowing your story, and I, thank you for sharing your story for the people that are watching and listening as well, because I think it is such a great story. And I've put your details in, but what I'll do is I'll put your social details in as well, so that people know where to find you. And I know you do talks and you get involved in lots of charity work as well, so it'd be great if we can add those details in, so that people can see where you're helping out, and if they want to contribute, then they can do.
Brilliant. Thanks ever so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you for your time. Thank you to those of you who have been watching, and if you're listening back, thank you for joining us, and we will be back again soon with another guest, another 5 questions, and a new topic.